Hey everybody, it's me, Dr. Donnie Eatman, otherwise known as Face to Face. Um, I wanna I wanna put a few snacks on the table, as it were, because we are working this message, and I know this message is pretty dense. This series, and it's extremely challenging, and sometimes I lose thought thinking that I'm talking to Bible students when not always I'm talking to Bible students. And so you're trying to figure out what I'm saying, and sometimes that can be a bit challenging. But we need to snack our way through this, if you will. And so I just feel as a kind of a knee jerk reaction on today, just sitting here being in thought that I want to do some impromptu. And so I want to deal a little more with this situation of building with the residue of Babylon, building with the residue of Babylon. And I say that because we are heading to the polls in just a few months, and we're going to put the pencil to the paper, and we're going to make a very important decision that's going to affect our lives and going to affect our children's lives, and it's going to affect the world that is around us. And my objective is to equip you with information that will help you to make the best decisions for your lives. And so we are living in a time where it's all about feelings. And let's just title this message "The Era of Feelings." If I wanted to take a topic for the era of feelings, we're living in that time when everybody is moving about and they're doing it based upon how they feel, not based upon the Word of God and the will of God per se, because God has gotten lost in the sauce. And this is one of the renowned things that I'm trying to bring forward in the when I talk about the residue of Babylon, and I talk about the new builders of the church, which were the Levites, or they would be in the person of our bishops, the Catholic Church, the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, the Pentecostal Church, all these different churches that we have today. And I talk about from Ezra, the book of Ezra, how once they saw the foundation, some saw it and they cried, and others they saw it and they screamed for joy. They praised. And so now the issue is why were one group of people in tears and the other group of people they were not. They were praising because it made them feel a certain way. And so now we've been challenged, and I don't want to go back and rebuild the Alamo, but we're being challenged with a way of church, a way of seeing God versus another way of church and another way of seeing God. Both of them they deal with the foundation. One foundation was built upon a very sure rock, a steadiness, a surety. It was built upon something that was eternal, that would last forever. And then, after being in Babylon for so long, the other group or the new church under the the canopy or the auspices of the Levites as being in charge of building that, they built theirs on a different type of foundation that was not stable and that was shifty. But what the foundation did produce was an emotional atmosphere that was welcoming for the people. The people they wanted that because into that it gave them because of that it gave them more freedom, gave them the latitude to move about in this space of Christendom the way that they wanted to move. And so when that's just a little short recap, short version of this little snack that I want to give you. So as we move forward here, when we talk about the challenges from this era of feelings, what I want to bring forward today in our short time together is that the war that we are experiencing in the Middle East, and I know that we're not there, but it is affecting us, is a war between two brothers. Those two brothers were Isaac and Ishmael. It was Isaac and Ishmael. and it came about because one brother was being heard and another one was being shunned. One brother was being preferred and another brother was being discarded. One brother was at the center and the other brother was at the margins. And so even today, what we see is we see the spiritual discord of two brothers. Now we can we can mine that out, and we can see the byproducts of it as relates to land, territory, and all that type of stuff. But when we look at the root cause, the foundation of it goes back to two sons that they were established differently, and they were established differently because of their father, and it was their father's behavior. Abraham could not wait. He heard from God, but he was disobedient with God. Although he was the father of faith, he made some very critical mistakes that is also that is affecting us even to this particular day. And so, as a result of that, what happened is he had another son that was born by Hagar, and he developed some serious emotions for Hagar, and he loved Ishmael, but he could not go outside of the will of God ultimately for his life, and that was for Isaac. And so, although he loved Ishmael, he had to let Ishmael and Hagar go because the promise of God was not according to Hagar and Ishmael, but the promise of God was according to Rebecca or not Rebecca, it was according to Sarah and Isaac. And so as we drive that and we look at what's going on right now, what we are seeing is a pounding on the door based upon an emotional pound based upon feelings. It's about wanting to be accepted. It's about wanting to be heard. It's about wanting to be included. And so a lot of the things that even as we go to the polls, we will go to the polls and we will deal with this issue of inclusion. This issue of inclusion, it's bringing out the Me Too movement. This issue of inclusion is bringing out these different women acts that are becoming polarized out front. It's Black Lives Matter. It's the LGBTQ, and it's so many other different things now that have come into play as relates to the 14th Amendment. That it would take a whole nother 3 or 4 hours in order to even get into that. However, this is really what we're doing, and the purpose of my series is to help you to understand the history, the backdrop behind why you feel the way that you do, what happened to put you in this light. So I'm going back to the originators, which was Abraham, and so we can see this emotional war between Ishmael and between Isaac, and it's still going on. Christianity and the Muslims are still fighting. They're still at war. Out of Abraham, you have three different religions. Basically, you have Christianity came out of it. You have the Jewish people that came out of it, which was the Judea religion, or which is still really Christianity, but they see it a little bit different because one is very legalistic and the other one is free. That's Christianity is free. But then you also have the Muslim religion that it came out of. Out of Abraham. Now we don't want to say that, or we don't want to believe that, but all of those came from Abraham. And so we look at what's going on right now, and we raise the banner towards Abraham, but Abraham is the reason for a lot of this turmoil right now. He very much is. But we don't like to look at it like that because we say Abraham is the father of faith and all that stuff. Let me continue. Even when we look at Isaac, he mimicked the same issue that his father did. Abraham, when Abraham had him and Ishmael, that was an issue. And then Isaac, he begot Esau and Jacob, and Esau and Jacob, they exhibited the same behavior. And so this thing is so clear to me, and I've even lived it in my own life. But you would also see them going on to be at war as well. They were two that were twins that they even fought in the womb. It was a spiritual fight as well as a territorial fight, and all that. So when we look at that, we can go back and we can see the challenges between the two. Now let me just make mention of something, and I'm gonna be very critical here because I know a lot of us we don't take this in consideration. But see, I analyze things from a different viewpoint. I see the bigger picture. I wanna believe that, and so if I was living during the day of Isaac, and when he had Esau and Jacob, being the type of person that I am, I believe that I'm a man's man. And to me, Jacob was what you call a church boy, but I would classify him as a punk because Jacob was a type of boy, a son that he wanted to stay at church. Now I know it wasn't church back then, but he was a mama's boy. But he was the one. The evolution of the church came out of that, and so Jacob was the one that mama kept at home. Mama, cuddled him, and he didn't have to work. He didn't have to do that. Everything was provided for him at the house, and this, that, and the other. I mean, don't get me started on Jacob, because I didn't get respect for Jacob until Jacob in the 38th chapter of Genesis, when he saw God face to face, and he called the place Peniel, for I've seen God face to face. I didn't get respect for him until then. On the other hand, Esau was a man's man. Esau was a hunter. Esau was one that he would leave home. He was going to make it on his own. Esau was my kind of dude. Now, Esau, don't get me wrong, he took after the pattern of Ishmael, which was basically his biological uncle. He took after Ishmael, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, you need the Ishmaels and the Esau's. Even today, they are reflection. All the money is in the Middle East. These people, they do business a little bit different. And I'm not saying it's the right or the wrong way to do it, but what I'm saying, as opposed to the church still living like Jacob. And Jacob, to me, was, it's the, have it and grab it. 3 steps to a turnaround. 7 steps to success. All this kind of churchy stuff that we do, instead of being a man and getting your bow, put it in your quiver, learning how to use it, and you go out there and you work. Apostle Paul said, if a man don't work, then he don't eat. And so it's a lot of us bishops, our so-called leaders, that are of the Levitical priesthood, that came out under the residue of Babylon, and we just figuring out the easy way to stay ahead, and that's to manipulate the congregation in order to have what we want, to drive what we want, to live where we want to live, and to go and do as we want to, instead of the Esau's of the world and the Ishmaels of the world that had to go out and work. Now, does that sound like I'm diming on them? I am, because there's a part that I understand. There's a part that, when we look at, God, what was you up to when all this happened? And this is where, it's God's sovereignty why he does what he does. Again, I'm a proponent of a working man, a real man. And Esau exhibited those features, those attributes for me, and not Jacob. Jacob was just a church boy. He reminds me of the choir boy that was always at church. Let me play a certain instrument, and when am I going to preach again, and all this kind of stuff. Just a manipulator. That's one of the reasons for his name. He was a trickster. And I never had respect for people like that. Even today, we still have the residue of people that are being put in positions that they shouldn't be put in positions. But that's something that I'm gonna talk to Jesus about, because the folks that really should be there, they're not there. And hey, it is what it is. But you just gotta. It makes you want to think about it. At the end of the day, these are the people now that say, I want to be heard. And it's me too, and I understand that. But the thing is, when you say that it's me too, you still have to look at the Word of God and see what it was that He put in the Abrahamic covenant, and what it was that He wanted the world to be built upon, and that's what we have to work with. So when you say me too, you have to start through process of elimination, inductive and deductive reasoning. You have to say, well, there's certain things that is prohibited. There's certain things that God don't like. And so when you get to Me Too and you say, well, I can marry same sex and all that stuff, this is a message for a different time. But I'm trying to get you to understand, and I do get where a lot of us feel now, and I'm not an advocate of that. Don't get me wrong. And I'm gonna be talking about Trump here as well. I'm not an advocate of Trump, but I want to get you, nor am I an advocate of Biden, but I want to get you to understand I'm right there in the middle, and I'm very analytical, and I'm looking at all this and I'm juxtaposing it to the Bible. So when we get finished with it, we still have to adhere to the ways and the will of God, whether we like it or not. God put His word in place for a reason, and that reason is for the greater good, and that's a message that I'm gonna have to deal with at some point here. So when we look at, I mentioned this war in the Middle East, and it's basically a spiritual war, although it has um, property elements that is attached to it. It is still a war between two sons, which is Ishmael and Isaac. I'm gonna close here, and before I close, now we're talking about two. And I'm sorry, I keep looking down. I don't know. Y'all bother me when I look you in the face. Um, we're talking about two brothers that is kicking up a lot of dust, and they are kicking up a lot of dust for the world. See, these two brothers now, when we talk about Israel, they are going to have a great say as to where the world is going. And so we need to take note of that. I don't have time to get into all that, but my message today was the era of feelings. And so I want to close out by saying this, that Abraham not only didn't do right, wasn't fortified enough to wait on God and just to have it where it would not be any ambiguity, no issues between two sons. Because if he hadn't did what he did with Hagar, then Ishmael would have never even came into the picture. But even before that, we had another concern with Abraham, and that was with another wife that he had was Keturah, and Keturah gave him six more sons. Now I want to say this, I don't want to close, but I'm just giving you some food for thought, because it is the era of feelings, and it's the era of Me Too. All six of those sons have meanings behind their names. All six of those sons were Abraham's biological children. All six of those sons should be counted, and in so many ways, right? They should be counted, whether we want to count them or not. What we are dealing with today is people that are not counted. Now, here's the issue with his other six sons that are Abraham, our father Abraham's sons. They ain't even mentioned. When we look at the grand scheme of things, we only talk about Isaac and Ishmael in terms of the renowned brothers, sons that are out there in the forefront that you talk about. You don't talk about Median. You don't talk about Midian. You don't talk about Susha. I think that's his name. You don't talk about all those other ones that was there, that came out of Abraham's loins, that they don't have a voice. They are really at the margins. What about them? I bring that up because this is what we're dealing with when I say the era and time of feelings, and the era and the time of wanting to be heard. They represent a lot of us. They represent black people. They represent women. They represent the LGBTQ, and all of the era and all of the missteps with those other movements. What I'm trying to get you to understand and to embrace with the challenge that we deal with today, although it is not biblical for us to walk in that direction with the women's movements. And I don't, I'd have to drill down and do a deep dive into that to explain that. The LGBTQ, ABC community, their movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, all these different areas, they have some highlighted parts of that need to be noted, but on the other hand, they have a heavy part of it that needs to be discarded, because God is not in it per se, right? And we'll have to talk about that at a different point. But what I want you to understand and take away from this today is that they are part of the Abraham body. And whether or not we include them or we don't include them, they were there. And so today, it is very clear that everybody is screaming to be heard. Everybody is screaming to be heard. I've got three brothers. It's four of us, and out of four brothers, every last one of us feel differently. And it was up to my father when my father passed to handle his business a certain way. Well, to some of the brothers, we feel that he's handled it the right way. To other of us brothers, we feel like he handled it the very wrong way. However you look at it, it left all four of us feeling some type of way, right, wrong, or indifferent. And to this day, there is still a territorial, there is still a spiritual, there's still this tension between all four brothers, and it's all based upon how our father, how he dealt with business, how he managed his life. And so this is not something that I'm just saying to you based upon, I'm just trying to give you a Bible lesson. I'm saying this because this is also my life. So when I look at it from a practical, personal standpoint. I look at it from a historical standpoint, and I look at it from a very spiritual standpoint. So I wanted just to tack this message, just a little snack on to everything else that I've been saying, and I want you to consider it as you continue to examine the things that are before us as we make our decision in 2024 who we will elect as the next president of these United States, because it is going to be very meaningful and it's going to affect your life and the lives of those that are around you very heavily, whether we want it to or not. And so you may not feel like this is relevant, but I'm coming at it from a different perspective, and it is very relevant. And if you take this and you really think about what I'm saying and you break it down, it will start to make more and more sense to you as we continue to have this conversation. I want you to be blessed until the next time we talk. Shalom.